Hey, well, last week, David, why don't you do your reading now? And then I'll open everything else up. Oh, good. David, you are muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. Hello, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom, and it's good to see all of you here. For the last 2 weeks, I have been observing Comet Tsuchin Shan Atlas every night. And that's just a beautiful, beautiful comet. And it reminds me every night why I got into comets in the first place, all the way back from Comet Ikeyaseki in 1965. It's absolutely gorgeous. The comet is fading. And to celebrate it, I would like to quote today, Enos Vajda was a Hungarian poet, lived from 1827 to 1897, and his poem is called The Comet. Across the night, a crimson comet lies. It ranges from the zenith to the ground. They say its path is straight throughout the skies and never marks through space, a circling round. On where light's gathering legions flame and burn, it runs an endless race through gulfs unknown. It cannot or it will not backward turn, and so it is ever hopeless and alone. Its steadfast worship to the moon is sent, that fickle, ever-circling satellite, majestic mourner of the firmament, offering grief, I praise you in the highest. Vast sorrow, symbol of my soul's despair, a radiant brush that paints my destiny, the utter loneliness of such as we. Thank you very much. Marty, back to you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, David.
Now, he described, I have to ask this question. He describes the comet as crimson. Is that right?
Yeah, each comet has a slightly different tint to it.
Yes.
The gassy comets tend to be more greenish, but this one was very dusty. So it is more of a crimson, a whitish crimson type of comet, and it's just been lovely in the evening sky. It is fading though.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, I'm going to start with our opening prayer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. And basically, it is you have sanctified us through your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves in things of Torah. Well, last week we started. We ended with a discussion concerning
chapter and verse.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Numbers 15, and we're going to start on verse 30. But we had been discussing a little bit and what precedes this. It deals with unwittingly sinning. Okay, and it is so the person has to atone. He has to do penance in some way of a sacrifice. And but now we are going to be confronted with a different type of situation. And if I know David and Michael and Gail have slightly different sources. Steve has another source. So I'll start at the top. So for David, would you? It's top on my screen. David, would you please read?
Marty, can I just
Oh, sure,
interject just for 1 second.
sure.
I think we need to remember for perspective. There are two contexts here. One is that they were talking that it's the same for an Israelite and a stranger.
Yes,
Okay, and two is while it's still considered a sin,
mm-hmm,
it's unintentional and what we would certainly call a mistake
right,
or an error, especially if someone who is new to the community. I'm not using it as
No, go ahead.
Okay,
Well,
but if
go
someone
ahead.
who's new to the community and doesn't, ignorance is no excuse kind of thing,
Right.
okay? You're still, someone who is a stranger, someone who's new to the community is still bound by the same expectations and then the same consequences as one who is an Israelite, one who is a citizen.
right.
So I think as we go further, we need to keep those two contexts in mind.
Yes,
Okay.
it's going to come up in
Right,
this again.
right.
Just to I wish we had a lawyer with us because ignorance of the law is not an
No
excuse.
excuse.
It's not an excuse even in our law.
Right.
Okay, and European countries as well. So it's something to take into consideration. So
Yeah, I want to add something, if I may, just a little side note to that. A mistake, people often, either they don't know or they choose to use the words that they want, but uh, you have to also understand between a mistake and a choice.
Mhm.
That often gets misconstrued, but some people use it purposely. But a mistake and a choice are really two different things.
Yes, that's why the word unwittingly is used.
Yeah,
Okay?
right.
And
Very
in other
good.
contexts, they'll use the word accident.
Accident, yes.
Right.
Yeah. So, David, if you would care to read from verse 30,
Mm-hmm.
uh, all the way through the end of 36.
Okay, here we go. But the soul that doeth aught with a high hand, and I guess the expression high-handedness has its origin here. But the soul that doeth aught with a high hand, whether he be homeborn or a stranger, the same blasphemeth the Lord. And that soul shall be cut off from among his people, because he hath despised the word of the Lord and hath broken his commandment. That soul shall utterly be cut off. His iniquity shall be upon him. And while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks upon the Sabbath day. And they that found him gathering sticks brought him unto Moses and Aaron and unto all the congregation. And they put him inward. And they put him inward because it had not been declared what should be done to him. And the Lord said unto Moses, the man shall surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones without the camp. All the congregation brought him from without the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died as the Lord commanded Moses.
Okay, very cumbersome English, but those could follow it in their own commentaries. Anyway, any comments about what we just read? Yes, Gail. Oh, you? Oh, okay. Okay,
Same thing.
any comments about this?
I'll wait to see if anybody jumps before I.
Okay, there are a lot of things you should think of.
Well,
Yes, go ahead, Gail.
it's kind of a general sin. It's not very specific exactly what he did, which kind of bothers me, but doesn't say really what he did specifically.
Well, I said he was gathering wood.
Violated the Sabbath.
Well, yeah,
And I do actually have a comment.
Okay, before we get into a midrash, I want to hear.
How do you know it's a midrash?
You have it.
Okay, okay. Don't be too quick to judge here.
Okay, that's.
oh, I was looking at the verse before where it said, a person will act with a high hand, and it said he is blaspheming, and the person will be cut off because he has disdained the word. His crime is in him. So that's the one I was referring to, not the guy who was collecting wood. So,
Okay,
Okay.
sorry. I should have been more specific.
Might be just an illustration. It might be an example of.
it's an example, but there are a lot of things you have to assume first.
Of course.
So what are the assumptions? Okay. What is the first thing that comes to mind? If you, what is he doing on the Sabbath?
He's gathering sticks.
He's gathering sticks, which is,
It's, that is a forbidden act because it's some sort of, I guess, general heading of creative work.
And we don't know if he
Yeah.
was chopping the wood or just
Oh,
gathering it.
right.
We don't know what his intention was. Was it to make a fire? Was it to build? All of those things are
That's right.
specifically restricted.
So you can see, but also maybe someone in his home was ill
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
and he needs fire. Okay, would that be an extenuating circumstance?
To the Hasidic, it would.
Yeah, in the Hasid, there's a beautiful story by Peretz about
But-
something close to that.
But that's why, the way I see it, that's why this was placed here.
Right.
Right after the statement of someone who brazenly,
Right,
spurns God's word
right.
and da 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 da.
So so are we to assume in verse 31, okay, because he has spurned is now God knows everything. He knows your intentions, things like that. Okay, we've discussed that before. So is it because God knew that he was doing something he shouldn't have been doing on the Sabbath? Or is it or did he, another moment where he's expecting people to be the lawyers involved, to say, well, he had this type of situation or he had that type of situation. Maybe the punishment that you come up with, we should take that into account.
Well, you're talking about intent,
Intent,
right? I mean, that's always an interesting topic, so.
Okay, well, Marty.
go ahead now,
Yeah,
Steve.
yeah, this,
Yes,
bear with me.
okay,
Bear with me, this isn't a midrash yet. This
Okay,
is just
okay.
me, okay? But I think you know.
Do you know what?
No, I was just, you were reading my
Okay,
mind.
midrash would be like Aesop's fable,
Okay,
okay, like legend or trying to fill in the gaps.
right.
okay.
Of, with all these questions that we're not the first ones to ask these questions of
Right.
what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? So the midrash would be legend and lore that tries to fill in the gaps and make it more understandable.
Thank you.
But, yeah, and actually, I will put in, the Midrash is very interesting here.
Sure.
So I will
Do both.
put that in here, okay? The Torah does not disclose the violator's name. Rabbi Akiva taught, so this is actually in the Talmud, this embellishment on the story. Rabbi Akiva taught the Shabbos desecrator was none other than Tzilaf Chad, who was, we can infer this from a later statement, Tzilaf Chad's daughters, and this is a little sugya, a little, kind of incident that happened later on. These were the daughters who said to Moshe, they came to Moshe, and our father died in the wilderness in his own sin, okay? So they're sort of inferring, oh, these famous daughters who came and they weren't going to get an inheritance. Well, these are the daughters of that unfortunate guy who was collecting sticks. But my sort of simple reading, I think you're going, and that's okay, but you're sort of going far afield of the story, all the intentions and the sub story or the prequel that's not here. But I think the more obvious view of what happened here would be that there's an assumption. I think they were going through the wilderness. There isn't a whole lot of firewood out there. And this is a person who basically wanted to get a jump on everybody else and figured they're not collecting wood, I will, So again, you do have to clarify, maybe there are, more motivations here or hidden ones, but the most obvious things, I think there probably would have been a little bit of a problem with people getting the jump on everybody else and gathering, firewood when nobody else is gathering firewood. And they had to make it very clear that that is a willful sin, that you're not supposed to be gathering firewood on that day. So, let it be known that the penalty will be severe if you try to do that. Okay. So that's my view of, rather than, because, you could always say, well, you could tell the cop, don't give me the parking ticket for parking in illegal space, and give the whole story of why you had to park in that illegal space. But
Like inside trading.
Okay, so that's all I've got right now.
Now,
Marty?
oh, yes, Rabbi Mary, and then I'm good.
Okay, but I think that Rabbi Norm was before me, so go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, you could also see it, the perspective as, and yes, many of the commentators say this is really out of chronological order. Okay, but this is the first instance of someone specifically desecrating the Sabbath.
Right, Beyad Ramah.
Right. And so Moses and Aaron and whatever, and the leaders of the people are saying, we can't allow this. We have to make an example of this person, of how bad it is. We have to show God that we really understand that there's a prohibition about any kind of work on the Sabbath, therefore the severe punishment.
Okay. Rabbi Mary.
Yeah, I don't know if it was to show others, but I think one of the things that we see many times is the issue of, did you do it without thinking as a mistake, or we're doing beyad ramah, it says, just in front of you, either to show you, like the kids do, I'll show you, or, I didn't care about the rule. What bothers me here the most is that what it says here is that if someone does that, beyad ramah, he's going to be cut off from the congregation, karot ikaret. It doesn't say you're going to be stoned or killed. Actually, they didn't know what to do. They kept him in guarding him because they had to decide what to do. But in my mind, they did the wrong thing because they didn't follow what was said about what to do in that case. And in English is in 31, Brock is commanded, the person will surely be cut off. His sin is upon him.
Right.
So this is what the guy did. Then they don't know what to do. And then they invent something to do. I'm sorry, they ask God what to do, and God tells them to kill him. Something is not right here not in the order of things or following, and you see that they didn't know what to do. But they had a direction what to do, but they didn't do it.
What does being cut off from the congregation specifically mean? Though?
It's
'Cause I-
karot, it's like cherem. It's like someone that you'll say, he doesn't belong to us anymore. You know, he's not a Bet Shalom person anymore. We don't want him there.
Yeah, it's,
Shouldn't.
and it's understood as a horrible punishment or edict, because not only is that individual placed in the harem, as we say, and excommunicated, but it means that their lineage, their yichus, as we say,
Right.
is wiped out. So,
Race.
so you're no longer like if you say I'm a Ben Moshe, you're no longer
That's right.
a child of that. So it's like attacking, the excommunication is also attacking your own quote unquote immortality within the people. That's why it was considered such a severe punishment.
Except in this case, they're also wandering through the desert, are they not?
Also, it could mean that he is ineffective in the community. He is no longer effective. He's ineffective
Oh, yeah,
as a member.
it may have been at that time, but I'm saying the notion of karet yikaretun
Yeah.
throughout the halakha, throughout history, becomes one of, it's such a severe punishment because you lose your immortality through your name.
But
So
Okay.
it occurs to me then it occurs to me that become karot is worse than being killed. Because if you are killed, at least your family stays in the congregation. That's, I didn't think about that. Something like that, it will be worse than being killed, especially stoned.
I just want to complete my question. If I could
Okay.
complete my question, okay? My
What did it
question
mean
was,
then? What did it mean then?
well, except they're wandering through the desert. And what does it mean when somebody it's a little bit beyond social excommunication if you're wandering through the desert as a tribe and this person is separated out. That's pretty much a death sentence anyway, isn't it? Or is it not? I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty severe. If they throw you out, you're on your own in the desert.
Right.
Yeah, it's so with verse 33, it doesn't say anything how they found him. Were they out looking for him?
No, it was in public he did it. That's the whole point. He did it in public. Everyone saw it.
Okay,
Or somebody saw it and reported it. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it opens the door. They were searching for him. Is that considered work?
They waited until Monday.
They- No, but I'm saying, okay, so Monday. So if somebody noticed him doing this, earlier on, we read that if it's okay to come up to him and say, hey, you know what? You're doing something very wrong. You should atone for this. Would that have saved him?
Well, that would have put him into the category of the last paragraph.
Yeah.
He wasn't aware of the prohibition,
He wasn't aware of the prohibition,
Right.
or he,
or just,
Mistake.
inadvertent.
right,
Right,
inadvertent. And if somebody from the community went up to him and said, you know, you're not supposed to do it because it's the Sabbath, then what would you say about that? And suppose he said, oh, I forgot. I didn't look at the calendar. I totally forgot. And different scenario. And is the community, the community culpable because they didn't mention it to him? Go ahead. All the time. No,
¿Qué pasa?
go ahead. Gail?
Oh, you're talking, I didn't hear you call my name, sorry. No, I was just thinking, how do the people feel, or the person feels that saw this guy stoned to death? Maybe he was the one responsible for reporting him. That can't have been easy, or maybe it was, I don't know. I mean, there's people that kind of enjoy that sort of thing, reporting others. And then those who feel a little bit of guilt, maybe, because they're responsible for his death in some ways.
Yeah, you can look at it this way. If you this is where the law becomes, it's a great lesson in of law, because of coming up with all of the different possibilities. That's what we're doing now, what a defense lawyer has to bring up.
And we're also doing what the students of Talmud,
Yes,
have done for
This is
centuries
exactly right.
also. Of debating,
That's
well,
right.
what if, and what if, and what if, and,
Right.
let me just, feeling the same kind of empathy that Gail is about all the people, how did they feel in having to stone him to death? That was a typical punishment
yes.
of the time, not only in the Torah, but in cultures
Right.
but what Jewish law comes along and says is that there can't be one executioner. There have to be multiple people involved in the act so that no one person can have the guilt of saying it was my rock that ultimately killed him.
Well, this is like a firing squad, there's 10 people that shoot and one has the bullet or something. But what I was concerned about is the person that goes out and sees this guy and he runs back and he says, there's this guy out there gathering wood, blah, blah, blah. And then he ends up dead. Maybe he didn't personally throw the rock at the guy, but he's still his responsibility because he reported him. I'm not so sure I'd want to be the person that reported him.
Yeah, but he gets extra brownie points.
In,
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't
in
know.
Yeah,
a,
it's the gossiper of the congregation.
Hey,
Now, guys, I see all this, as Martin mentioned. This is a book of laws, and this is one president. That's what you said, and it's a president to know what to do in a case. And in the case that the judge has to sleep on this because he's not sure, he looks at the laws and nothing says about it. That's what bothers me, because it does say. But the other thing is what it's called begalui ubemistar, things that are done in the open and things that are done hidden. And we are going to see that in many, many cases. To do something against the law in the open is very sinful. It's just saying, God gave that law, but I don't care. I'll do it anyway. Or doing something you didn't pay attention and you wash your underwear and you hang it out. You didn't think about anything. So those are legal things, as Marty is talking about. These are legal things. It doesn't matter if it's if someone called on him, which he didn't, because it's ferush. It says very clearly, beyad ramah. He did it in public. Now, regarding the stones, you know that the Christians adopted this issue very, very strongly and in a very beautiful way, I think. Who's going to throw the first stone? And it comes from that.
In
Okay.
an attempt in our society, in an attempt to remove guilt from an execution, specifically by the electric chair execution. By that, there are, and this is an attempt to remove the guilt. There are 3 people that will pull the lever that would supply the electricity to kill the person who was to be executed. And the 3, they don't know of the 3 which is, and they pull it together. And that is an attempt to remove guilt. And of course, you have death by lethal injection. So I don't know how that would work. But in any event, that's what I would say to the electrocution of a human being.
Thank you. You want to say something?
No, I'm finding.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve. You're up.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't give the whole midrash before. There was an interesting midrash, al gabe midrash, that one, and Rabbi knows what I'm saying, that there's sort of this Talmudic story goes a little bit beyond just that. So, just to refresh everybody's memory, according to Rabbi Akiva, this sinner mentioned who got stoned for gathering sticks was none other than Tzlafchad, who was the father of this famous index case, the women who actually inherited, which was a novel thing. Now, after Rabbi Akiva mentioned this, or maybe not exactly after, because sometimes discussions in the Talmud there are years and years between discussants, but Rabbi Yehuda ben Besaira said to Akiva, he said, Akiva, you will be held accountable in the future for disclosing the desecrator's name. Why? If he really was Tzlafchad, you will be punished for revealing his name while the Torah concealed it. Okay, what business is it of yours to do a reveal on this guy? The Torah didn't mention him. And if it was a different person, if you're wrong, you unnecessarily maligned Tzlafchad. Okay, so basically, Rabbi Yehuda ben Besaira said, "Hey, Rabbi Akiva, you've got a big mouth. You shouldn't have, stepped in or stuck your nose in here." Okay, but then Rabbi Akiva held, though, that he was permitted to publicize that Tzlafchad was a desecrator because his motives, that is, Rabbi Akiva's motives, were l'shem shamayim, we're all good. We're for God's purpose, greater purpose. So anyway, it's interesting because that's the way that Talmud elaborated on this particular story.
So what we're discussing is the 4th commandment.
What's what?
4th commandment,
And refresh us.
The Sabbath day.
the Sabbath day. Remember, and I'll just read it so it'll make it easier. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath of the Lord and your God. You shall not do any work, you, your son or daughter, your male or female slave, or your cattle, or the stranger who is within your settlements. So it doesn't matter if it's a citizen or a stranger.
And we don't know in this case.
In this case, we don't know.
It's just a man. We don't
But it's
know.
immaterial because he could be anybody. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and sea and all that is in them. And he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Some people have also read this as remember the Sabbath day, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord, saying it's the Lord's Sabbath, it's God's Sabbath. And so if God was speaking, it would be not the Sabbath, but my Sabbath. Remember. Okay, it's not just the Sabbath, it's God's Sabbath. And he's commanding us to follow it because it was his Sabbath. Now, any disagreement?
What are you supposed
Well,
to?
this is not a disagreement, but one thing that I would like to introduce is the issue of, because today, unfortunately, there is a mistake of saying the Hasidim, we're thinking the ultra-Orthodox, but Hasidut, the Hasidim, did care about the reasons of doing things. Because someone mentioned to help, I think Norm said, to help this person, and someone said there was a good reason for this person to do what he was doing. Today in the law, I'm not sure. I'm not a lawyer. I'll ask my son. He's coming tomorrow. My son is a lawyer. Anyway, he's
Glad you got that worked in, Mary.
But today in the law, sometimes, depending on the judge, what they call it, circumstances, making them easier, and one of the things that it says is there is no righteous, there is no good judgment without a compassion.
Right.
So, so this is something introduced by the Hasidic thinking, and I really encourage people to look at Hasidut because it's such a beautiful, in my mind, it's a beautiful, beautiful thinking about who we are as a people, that it's more important if there is a good intention to do something and to break the law, even if it's the law of Adonai.
This is, it reminds me of Ruth Bader Ginsburg,
Yes.
the right to dissent.
May her memory be a blessing.
That's
Is
a-
it?
Amen.
that's-
I need this.
I know.
That's a real lead.
Yeah, that's a stretch.
But it is.
Don't disagree with it, but it's a lead.
No.
Right.
But it's one of those things. What, any other things about the degree of punishment?
Only to add that as I understand the later literature, the
Mhm.
follow-up literature, because this is not the only example of capital
That's right.
punishment.
That's right.
So there is a lot, not only the legend and lore midrash, but there's an awful lot of the halachic, the legal interpretation and debate. So the rabbis would jump in immediately. Forget your son who's the lawyer, but the rabbis.
I can't forget.
The rabbis would jump in and say, wait a minute, you know what the one problem immediately is? You're not allowed to convict someone in a capital crime without sleeping on it. You have to sleep on it over. There cannot be an immediate.
Knee jerk reaction. Yeah.
Right. And a number of things like that. So they use these examples and they admit not that the Israelites and their understanding of God's word, not that the Israelites were wrong, but that our society, understanding the human condition better, now can reinterpret this. And some people would maintain, Mordechai Kaplan, if no one else, would maintain, or Buber would maintain that it's for the benefit of humanity's, feeling of self-worth rather than worshiping God. Okay, that's how we have to reinterpret these kinds.
Yeah. Another thing I'll add, if you remember, the punishment for Ben Sorer, a child that is a chutzpahdik misbehaving and doing stuff to his parents, also the Torah said we should stone him. But then later on, the rabbi said, well, they have to convey the Sanhedrin, the group of elders that were 70, by the gate of the wall to make the decision. Well, then, first of all, they couldn't have a gate. If they didn't have a gate, there's a problem. If you cannot gather 70 people, it's a problem. So that's happened that they never happened. So,
Right.
yeah.
To follow up what the rabbi was, Rabbi Roman, is that in our society, there's a lot of people on death row, but they've been on death row for many, many years, awaiting execution. However, since DNA evidence has come about, many of these people on death row have been proven innocent.
Correct.
You see, because when you say sleep on it, you see, that's the point of waiting, because you give a benefit. If someone is found guilty of first-degree murder, first-degree murder carries what they call special circumstances, and those special circumstances are death. And so that person is given a lot of opportunity, or has a lawyer working for him. And if the lawyer believes that he truly is innocent, whatever it means, that they're given time to prove it or try to prove it, because taking the life of a person is as serious as you can get. So sleep on it has a lot of meaning and a lot of value.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. Anything else? Yes, Gail.
I was just going to say, in answer to what Michael just said, he's correct, except it depends on what state you live in too. And going back to this person who reported the person, and going back to this person who reported the guy gathering wood, there's two kinds of people in this world. There are those who delight in finding out somebody else is doing something wrong and immediately report it. And there are others that will maybe contemplate the consequences if he reports it, or maybe tries to talk to the person, or, take some time before doing it. So again, it gets back to an attitude about punishment, which to me, that's the most serious thing here is the person who has reported it, to me, is more of a question or discussion, a point of discussion, than the punishment itself.
Sure.
Should be.
Very good, very good. I just wanted to explain, I like to provoke discussion all the time. And
No,
He does a good job of it too.
yeah, he does.
And if you have a comment, even if this is the first time you're here, just say, say something.
Sure, sure.
You chime in. Don't be bashful. Okay.
Sometimes I put my foot in my mouth.
No. We all do.
Can I tell a story?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
one of my two professors of Midrash at the rabbinic school, whatever it was, 55 years ago, whatever, was in Cherem, had been parot karetun, okay, had been excommunicated. He was originally an Orthodox rabbi from Hungary, came to the United States, and he was placed in Cherem, excommunicated officially, according to the Orthodox rabbinate, because he, I don't remember all this, it's a lot of years ago. I don't remember all the story, but something about that he had married a woman who her divorce wasn't her, get, she didn't have the get yet.
Yeah.
It was something like that, and they had gotten married and had a child, and and his actions were totally, outside the realm of what a rabbi should do. So he was placed in the harem.
Okay.
Wound up teaching at the Reform Rabbinic School. Okay, he was accepted there. He was a recognized scholar, and he slowly became much more comfortable with the reform and the liberal approach to the Jewish world and whatever. So he'd already been teaching there for, I don't know, 15, 20 years by the time that I came in. So, but he introduced himself in the first day of class. He said, "This is my name. Some of you may have seen some of my books or my writing or my responsa and whatever. I admit that I'm in cherem, which means by definition that if I sign your ordination certificate, that automatically places you in cherem. So I'm telling you right now, 5 years before you graduate, make a decision that if if you have me sign, and I understand if you don't want me to, and whatever, and and then he said, and I hereby invite all of you to my house for lunch on Saturday, on Shabbat. Okay. But if it offends you, and you need to know in advance, after lunch, I'm going to light up my pipe and smoke. So it just was that kind of, that's what he thought about, like you say, you're a Ramayad, right? Okay. That's what I think about this excommunication thing. It has no sway on me whatsoever, but I respect you, he's saying to his students, I respect you if you read it a little bit differently.
Okay.
Right.
Important question.
Yeah.
This is.
In
So
spite of the
incidentally,
fact,
that means that I'm excommunicated because he did sign but there are other issues.
so my very important question is,
Yeah.
are we a totally treif Reformed congregation now, in light of the fact that we have
No, well,
rabbi?
this is not a reform, this is not a reformed congregation, so.
Okay, are we a treif generic congregation?
There are those who would say, but only from the standpoint of, and that, seriously, they would say that every word of my teaching is treif, is incorrect, is not kosher. Okay.
Right.
But the only issue, I can't determine, for example, whether someone like you is Jewish. It's only in a matter of personal status.
Right.
That if the rabbi, this rabbi, says so and so is Jewish when there's a question, Like, if the mother's Jewish, there's no question. But if someone comes to me and says, my mother wasn't Jewish, or there are questions, we're not using as an example here, all right?
Okay, that's a
You know,
good idea.
there's a question of what they call, zilach, personal identity. And for example, of whether so-and-so can marry someone, or whether so-and-so can be buried in the Jewish cemetery in consecrated ground. That's where my decisions can be questioned.
Also, Piskei Halacha, right?
I would never be what they call a maradatra. I would never be the one to specifically say, this is kosher, this is not.
Any sort of halachic.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Because that's really the official function of a rabbi, as I've understood it, is really
Halacha. Right. Is
halacha, because anybody can officiate at a marriage.
Of course.
Anybody can officiate at a funeral.
you don't even need an officiant to just, witness it, right?
Any other comments? Well, this was a good discussion. Did you want to add something to it? Marianne?
He's kind of twisting my arm.
Yeah,
That's okay.
give
That's
something
okay.
about your background, just so why you want
I
to say it.
find this an incredibly interesting discussion, and I realized even on my way over here, I had committed a sin.
By what?
I was disagreeing with the political party.
Oh, okay.
Very adamantly. I used to work.
That's a no conversation.
Yeah,
I
can't
don't
wait for
discuss
this to
that.
be
That's
over
right.
with. I used to work in prisons. And I'm looking at this thinking, and I understand it's either a sin or it's not a sin. You're pregnant or you're not. That picking up wood, as Rabbi said before, you don't know why the guy was picking up wood. Could have been somebody in his family very sick and needed to be warmed. But working in prisons, I go for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I have worked with horrendous people who have committed crimes that you couldn't imagine in your wildest moment. So I can see that while capital punishment may not bring back that victim, and sometimes it brings closure to a family, and sometimes it does not. And it certainly does not deter very violent crimes. I see a place for it, but at least at this point in time, I recognize a place in society that we need to feel in some way that we are protected by the law, or there will be consequences, that people are, especially now, so out of control. And when there are consequences, and this business about the 5 daughters, I have some questions on that, but I could see how this would transfer through generations or through bloodlines, and that's what he wanted me to say. Thank you.
No, because it's important. And we will come to the 3 sisters later,
3 sisters.
in probably in about a month. At this rate, it may be 2. It may be 2 months
Right.
at this rate, but you never know. These are interesting ways of looking at law and punishment. Or as, what was it? Was it Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
or Tolstoy.
Tolstoy.
Tolstoy, okay. I don't remember which
Right,
one it
yeah,
was,
right.
but Crime and Punishment discusses this too.
Sure.
Okay, and this is as old as the hills, this type of discussion. Now, if there are no other comments, I want to say we have been called the people of the book. And we have also been called the people who remember. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind. Let's see, David read. Michael, would you care to read?
Let me see. From what, 37?
Verse 37 through the end of 41.
Okay. Before I do that, can I make one comment? What we're talking about punishment?
Or
Thank you very much. The sixth commandment, I believe it says, "Thou shalt not kill." But that is not, as far as I know, that is not the Jewish concept. It's "Thou shalt not murder."
right.
And the way I see it, if one chooses not to use the word murder at all, just this discounts that word, this causes a lot of problems because you don't identify what is correct. And I think that that is worth taking a look at. So that's what I wanted to say. But I'll read from 37. Okay. The Lord said to Moses as follows: "Speak to the Israelite people and instruct them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to the fringe at each corner. That shall be your fringe. Look at it and recall all the commandments of the Lord and observe them, so that you do not follow your heart and eyes in your lust urge. Thus you shall be reminded to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I, the Lord, am your God. I brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, the Lord, your God."
Thank you. Any comments?
I have midrash, but of course you.
No,
want-
no, go ahead.
Oh.
I was gonna say, I always like
Oh.
to let the folks up there first. Any comments about what Michael just read?
If it sounds familiar, that's the third paragraph of the V'ahavta
That's right.
section, right?
That's right.
Right.
The one we don't read, that we don't say, yeah. Well, I think this is part of what they said in, you should remember, for remind you. These days with my age, I need that more and more. Maybe I should wear a tzitzit just to find where I put my phone, because these are signs, need to be here and need to be here and need to be on your house and so forth. So these are reminders. And for me, it always was such a nice way of thinking about it, because we are humans that we forget. And even when you leave the house, in your gates, you have to put a reminder. And now, if we use this as a metaphor, is reminding us who we are, reminding us how to behave, reminding us whatever is important to you. And even if you are so angry at your kids, your spouse, your whatever, reminding you. So this is one of those. And what I like, I like, and actually I don't like, is how in modern days we play with these things. How many of you, I'm not going to ask or text, how many of you wear a talit katan with the fringes, something that the Orthodox wear under their clothing, and the fringes come out to remind them. And that's also something that it has been adopted, not to put the fringes on your clothes, as it says here. Marty, you should put them on your t-shirt because that's what it says. So it's adapting to the modern world to do things in a way that that I can approach the larger world without being,
So I have a question for Rabbi Mary,
yes.
if I may. Thank you. Why only one thread of blue? Why not all the fringes blue?
Well, in my mind, it's because the blue was very, very expensive. It's made out of snails. And it's a very, very expensive one. If you go to the religious neighborhoods, I think that some of them still make the blue in the traditional way. But I think that that's one of the reasons. That's what I think. Now, I'm asking you why you have to make 7 knots, K-N-O-T. There are all kinds of things I don't know. I don't know the answers for them. I can just speculate. When I learn about how they make the color blue, since I'm an artist, colors are important to me. In the olden days, they used natural sources to make color. So I think that it had to do with that. I don't know. Ask your rabbi in your temple.
So is there anything that did God command that these fringes have to be made of a certain material?
No, I don't think so. I
Right.
don't think it's commanded. And as I said, I don't know why I have to make 7 notes. And why a blue one? Just one. This is my interpretation. It's very expensive, but I don't know. I don't know. Actually, it's a good question, the material, because we know that in the laws there are issues of what shall I use, wool, or shall I use linen? Shall I mix them? I don't know, Michael. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I don't want to belabor that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Steve, he has some midrash on that.
Yeah, but first, an
Sure.
interesting comment I'd like to make, not midrash,
Please.
and then if you'll allow me still to proceed to my midrash, okay?
Sure.
But, I had occasion once to do an in-depth study of Zoroastrianism because I was doing a project on basically a quack doctor who had his own therapy, but he had come from India and he was a Zoroastrian. I was looking into the religion, and interestingly, there are many parallels. This ancient Babylonian religion, which probably we were exposed to when we were in the diaspora. And one of them is they do have their own version of a garment with tzitzit and knots. Okay, so it's because it's always kind of interesting to think that sometimes these the customs we've adopted them and elaborated on them and modified them to suit our purposes, but they're not necessarily always
giving them new justification or new reasons behind it, right?
But and it could be exactly that. But anyway, an interesting, and actually there's a lot of interesting stuff here about tzitzit. I will try to get through some of it that I think might be of interest to everyone. Okay, because that's why we're here, right? Okay, so one is just a little story I'll start with. Okay, an Apicorus, and an Apicorus is a heretic. Okay, an Apicorus once approached Rabbi Benjamin and said, "What foolish custom do you Jews observe? Why do you hang on the corners of your garments 8 knotted strings?" And Rabbi Benjamin explained. He said, "I will explain in a simple way. Our teacher Moshe complained to the Almighty that a man had desecrated the Shabbos because on that day he was not wearing his tefillin, which remind the Jew of the bond between Hashem and the Jewish people. At that time, Jews wore their tefillin all day, except on Shabbos, when one may not wear them." So there's an interesting elaboration there. And Hashem then told Moshe, "I will give you a mitzvah that applies even on Shabbos and on the Yomim Tovim. Command each Jew to attach tzitzit, knotted strength, to his garment in order to remember the mitzvot." You see that we act like those people who make knots in their handkerchiefs in order to recall certain matters. Okay, moreover, the Almighty ordered us to mark our garments just as a master bids his slave to knot his garments as a sign of servitude. Each detail of the mitzvah is designed to remind us that, as the Almighty's servants, we are obligated to fulfill his commandments. And now it's a little bit more about some of the questions Michael raised, okay? That is, you know, some sort of rabbinic explanations, okay? Tzitzit are attached to one corner in each of the four directions to remind us of our obligation wherever we turn. However, the tzitzit represent two witnesses in front of a person and two behind him that warn him against sinning. Okay, so it's sort of symbolic witnesses to everything you do. Okay.
Four Jiminy Crickets?
Yeah, yeah.
Whoa.
So the numeric value of the word tzitzit, okay, if you actually go to the trouble of totaling up the numeric value of the letters, is 600. If we add to this number its 8 threads
Right.
and 5 knots in each corner, we arrive at 613, a reminder of the 613 mitzvot. Okay, yeah, did you hear that, Michael? Okay, so that's sort of a rabbinic explanation of why, you know. Of the 8 threads, one must be of wool and dyed blue, techelet, with dye gained from the blood of the sea creature chilazon, which in modern Hebrew is snail. Okay, this thread may not be colored with blue dye obtained from any other source. The blue thread in the tzitzit suggests the heavenly throne of glory above. Okay, so that's why it's blue. It's blue like the sky, okay, and reminds us of the heavenly throne. Today, we do not have the chilazon, okay? That original sort of mythical source of the blue dye is no longer, okay? Hashem concealed it from us because we are not worthy of associating with the Kisei HaKavod, as were our ancestors. That's another little rabbinic elaboration, okay, that we're unworthy now, so we can't have the original blue dye. Our tzitzit, therefore, are comprised of only white threads, but are nevertheless kosher. The white color is a symbol of forgiveness of sin. And the tzitzit is also a hint of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Okay, here's some interesting more stories, not a whole lot more, okay? They are attached only to 4-cornered garments to allude to the 4 stages of redemption promised in Shemot, okay? And I shall bring out one, and I shall deliver.
Think of the 4 cups of wine at the same time.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. And I shall deliver 2, and I shall redeem 3, and I shall take 4. The Torah terms the corners of the garment knafim, or knafim, I guess, which also means wings. Okay, this hints that he redeemed us from Egypt speedily, as though on eagle wings. Okay, and moreover, for elaboration, each corner has 5 knots to remind us of the 5 books of the Torah. The 8 threads in each corner recall that a Jew must guard 8 organs that lead to sin: the ears, eyes, mouth, nostrils, hand, feet, reproductive organs, and the heart or emotions. The number 8 also suggests that if he guards against sin, he is elevated above the 7 heavens to the Kisei HaKavod. However, if he sins, he suffers 8 punishments, 1 in the grave and the others in the 7 compartments of Gehenna, which is a elaborate elaboration. Wearing tzitzit confers kedusha upon a Jew. Hashem commanded, wrap yourselves in garments resembling those of the angels. Tzitzit are attached to 4 corners corresponding to the 4 wings of the angels Chayot. Okay, that's a unfamiliar reference to me. I don't know what angels
Yeah,
are.
play with Gematria and you'll have all the answers in the world to the numerical thing. That's that. With the reform, renewal, and I'll stop, Martin, a second. We use the tzitziot on the talis. That also is not from the Torah, so interesting.
Okay. a bit more. Reb Yehuda ben Bar Eli would order a tub filled with hot water to be brought to him every Erev Shabbat. He washed his face, hands, and feet in honor of Shabbat. Then he wrapped himself in linen blankets to which tzitzit were attached. At that time, his appearance was that of a heavenly angel, totally devoted to fulfilling Hashem's will. However, merely wearing tzitzit does not protect a Jew against sinning. The Torah bids, and you shall look at it and remember all the mitzvot of Hashem and do them, unless one uses his tzitzit conscientiously to accept the authority of Hashem's mitzvot. He resembles a person who makes a knot in his handkerchief, a certain thing, he does not know what thing. It's an interesting thing to do, knotting a handkerchief, okay? The mitzvah of tzitzit applies only by day. No tzitzit are attached to sleepwear. Therefore, women are exempt from this mitzvah as they are from all time-bound mitzvot. One is obligated to attach tzitzit to one's art garments only if he happens to wear a four-cornered garment, just as one is only obligated in the mitzvah of fencing in his roof if his home has a roof. Nevertheless, the mitzvah is so great that our sages taught that a Jew should wear a four-cornered garment with tzitzit every day in order to fulfill it. So that's in what we see as the Orthodox custom. They put the tzitziot on a talit katan, the little thing that looks like an undershirt. Okay, it goes over the head. You should try.
I think, Marty, that someone wanted to say something. You were pointing when I interrupted. Were you pointed at one of the?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I'm going to stop talking because there's a lot of midrash here.
Okay, so if I can remember them, there's four. One is that, yes, as was pointed out, what Steve was saying, that particular blue from the snail or the mollusk is no longer available nor required, but they still chose that same shade of blue for the Israel flag.
Yes.
Okay, so that with the historical connection. The other thing is, while it doesn't explain the commandment to have the one blue thread, what the later halacha comes along and says that you look at the blue thread and compare it to the other threads or knots, and when you can no longer see the difference between the colors, that identifies when it's officially Lila or Arab, when it's officially, so you have to be, when you can no longer tell the difference between the colors. If you don't have a watch and you don't have an iPhone or something to tell you what time it is and when dusk is, you can measure it by because everyone, of course, was wearing it. That's that. The other thing, and there's two comments about it, in that last phrase with which even the Reformed and Reconstructionist and Renewal community you're familiar with, verse 41, right? I, the Lord, am your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. Starting with where's the word that I wanted to? Oh, yeah, with 40. Thus shall you remember and do all my commandments. Okay. The tradition is that you have to make sure you're pronouncing the Hebrew lo tiz karu with a zion, with a z sound rather than with an s sound, because if it was tis karu, to mispronounce it, that would be to earn a or to earn a reward.
Big money, yeah.
Don't think that if by doing all of these mitzvot that's what you should do to earn a reward. It's that you remember them because God told you to remember them. And then finally, this quote that's in the Eitz Chaim commentary: the purpose of remembering is not to shape our belief, but to guide our behavior.
Right.
Yeah. Mary said something about that, you know, in a similar
Yes.
kind of thing. Not to, you know, not to shape the belief, but to guide our behavior and what we do. I thought that's very appropriate.
Yeah,
Any other
that's
comments?
the one.
Is anyone familiar with this book?
Yeah, I have that.
Okay. I was just looking up fringes.
The Bialik. Yeah,
What is the
Which
title?
book is that?
We couldn't see the title.
the Book
And
of Legends by Bialik.
Oh, that's the, okay,
Book
that's
of
the Book of Legends.
Oh,
That's
okay.
Sefer, yeah. Okay.
Anyway, what's interesting is, and I realize that this is jumping ahead slightly, but the next book we're going to read is entitled Torah, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what he said about this?
That's the parasha. Yeah,
Korah jumped up and asked Moses, if a cloak is entirely blue, what is the law?
that's the Midrash. Yeah.
Which, so, but that, I was going to say something based on what you just said. Why would a single thread be placed instead of multiple threads? You know, make the whole thing blue.
Right.
Why would it be that? Now, we can talk about how expensive the dye was and all that, but let's say the dye was cerulean blue, which is found in any artist's array of paints or chalk or whatever. So crayons, things like that. So why would a single thread be there?
Well,
Please.
It stands out.
okay, no, just going back to the image that it has some sort of representation of the throne of God. And the throne of God is something we have to aspire to. It's not just there all the time for the taking. Okay, so you know, if the whole thing is colored blue, it's okay, the throne of God. But if you know you have a lot of white threads and there's one blue thread, and that's obviously it's like having a tiny diamond on a ring, okay, as opposed to being covered in diamonds. If people could go around covered in diamonds, maybe diamonds wouldn't be regarded as so valuable.
Right. Exactly.
Also,
Good point.
a lot of people probably had, just because of their usage, had fringes and tears at the bottom of their clothes. But if there was something that stood out,
Right.
it helped to remember that this is for a different purpose. This is part of the ritual.
Okay, now you can imagine sky blue, and this is sort of like trying to find a needle in a haystack. It's one strand of blue in all that white. And it's not navy blue, it's sky blue. It's going to blend in with white. It's going to blend in with other colors. So I would tend to look at it a little differently. Maybe it's there that it is hard to find. So that you remember. Things that are common, you forget. Your memory is based on certain events in your life that were meaningful to you. You don't remember in between. You don't remember, from one Sabbath to another necessarily. You may not remember for a year or maybe 20 years ago, but you'll remember a significant event that was significant to you. Well, maybe it has to be sought for. You have to look hard for this to be able to remember what was said, what was written. And for those that, it's not necessarily a reward but you are rewarded in a sense that you are now remembering why that is so important in your life. So I'm just going to toss that out, that it's, yeah, that's, and also when you remember, where did it come from? Well, it comes from what God told me. It's a recognition that God is there. It's not just a worn out cloth. You purposely put it there so that you can remember all of that. Not just the commandments, but who gave you the commandments too. I've said my piece. So I don't know. And toss it back to the rabbis for their no.
Makes sense.
Okay,
That's fine.
okay.
Good.
Well, I suggest Steve source. There are numbers of sources in some of the commentaries. There are tremendous essays based on this. I suggest if you do have a source, read it and come up with even more ideas from it, because there's so many more things that I'm sure we haven't covered.
Mhm.
Okay,
I've got another.
go ahead.
One interesting
Go ahead.
story about King David, as people know, at one point was fleeing from King Saul.
Yes.
You know, which can people hear me okay? I don't know. But this is a little midrashic story about David, or who is going to be king, fleeing from Saul, from King Shaul, okay? So once David and his followers, fleeing from Shaul, concealed themselves in the background of a cave. When Saul enters, this day God has delivered your enemy into your hand, David's men rejoiced. David, however, told them, God forbid that I should stretch out my hand against the anointed of Hashem, meaning King Saul. Instead, he stealthily approached Saul and snipped a corner off the king's garments. He would then be able to furnish proof that he had spared Saul from death. Thereafter, however, David's heart smote him because he had cut the corner of Saul's garment. Why did he regret his deed? According to one view, by cutting the corner of Saul's garments, David kept him from fulfilling the mitzvah of tzitzit until the king would change his robe. David reproached himself for depriving Saul of this great mitzvah, even for a short while. So an interesting little story.
You know what reminds me of? This is a story that my father said. You know that Abraham, our father ancestor, also wore a yarmulke, a kippah. How do we know that? Oh, of course, he said, and Abraham went. Do you think that he will go without a kippah? That's the kind of story you just said. Completely out of place, completely out of context.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, we can now begin the story of Korach, if the group wants, and we can.
It's my bar mitzvah portion.
Oh, well, if it's your portion, I'm going to ask you to read.
Marty, I just want to go back to one thing.
Sure,
I
please.
just noticed
Please.
in the Hertz commentary is it's a reminder that, and I don't know if this will open up a different conversation or not, but tzitzit is a requirement. It's a mitzvah only for men.
Right.
Right, because it's time related.
And the question is, why weren't women allowed to? And there's a cop-out answer. The cop-out answer is that wearing tzitzit fell into the category of those mitzvot that were time-bound. Okay, there's this principle of mitzvot shehazman garma that determined by time. And so it has to be worn at a specific time or performed at a specific time, and we don't impose that on women. The understanding, however, was throughout history, the understanding was that didn't mean that they were prohibited. It meant that they weren't obligated, that the women weren't obligated to do it. It didn't mean that they were prohibited. It's only much later that it gets turned into women cannot do that. As opposed, so that's why you will now see, even in modern Orthodox communities, you will see women wearing talitot, wearing a talis, okay? Because they're bringing back this notion that the law originally didn't say we couldn't, it said we didn't have to. Okay, so again, I don't know whether that wants to open up a different kind of conversation, and why originally it was included in those mitzvot that women were not, were not obligated to because of the time, like they say, time bound, where they might have to have the conflict of, well, which do I do? Do I perform this mitzvah, or do I take care of my crying child? That's why they made that distinction. So just to throw that out before we go on to
Feminism in the Torah.
That's right. There are other
Thank
things.
you, Mary.
well, you can, you're in charge.
No.
I am gonna have to leave in a couple of minutes because I want to get up to Tucson to visit somebody in the hospital.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't know whether you do, if you're gonna start a new parsha or.
This is,
Or-
because this is going to be another lengthy discussion. Do you want to end our session now? Or do you want to split the story of Korach into 2 weeks?
And we don't have Torah study next week.
That's right, so it may be
There's a
better.
Saturday morning service.
That's right. So it may be better to just do this, pick up the story of Korach in 2 weeks, rather than because otherwise we're gonna forget everything else, and we would have to do it twice.
So there is no Torah on next Shabbat, Torah study?
It's a service.
Yeah,
But
so we need to
maybe-
get on the fifth, that's the 16th, I guess.
Yeah,
Right.
in 2 weeks, whatever 2
Yeah.
weeks is. Yes.
Okay, and just
Okay.
corollary,
Sure.
discussion, we're gonna be, because it's something that's come up under Torah study, is gonna be continuing, I understand, the book of Joshua now.
Right.
As our adult
Right, we're gonna
education.
start with
So we
Joshua.
just have to establish dates for
The
that.
Haftarah for this portion that we just finished today is actually from Joshua, but
Uh-huh.
it's chapter 2, not chapter 1. So,
Right.
Okay, so.
yeah, I think I was looking at some dates. I think probably not till December,
Okay,
and maybe.
Right.
But we're looking at Tuesday mornings, maybe like every other Tuesday morning, avoiding the sisterhood meetings.
yeah,
10 o'clock on Tuesday.
we'll do it in Zoom.
Zoom, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. At
Starting-
10 o'clock, rather than 11, I believe, correct?
Right, starting
Okay.
with John.
Right. But it was December. I remember you saying that. So.
In a line, in a verse by verse, line by line.
Right. Right.
Any other, that should be very interesting. Any other announcements?
I have one.
Yes, Gail.
Liverpool is now in first place in the Premier League.
Okay.
Yes.
You have to understand, I live and die by this team, so it's, and they won today, and City lost, which puts them in first place, so that's big.
Dodgers are world champs.
Yeah, not even I knew. Okay.
Hi, I have something I'd like to share.
Yes, please.
Yeah, Grace,
Please,
right?
Grace.
Yeah, I'm leaving Wednesday for California for 1 week.
Oh,
And
very
so
good.
I won't be able to attend Shabbat, but you'll have it live, so maybe, I'm not sure if there's gonna be a football game on Saturday or Friday. And then Monday, I'll be gone the 6th through the 13th. Monday, the 11th is my grandson's 10th birthday. So
Oh,
it's
big-
important double-digit dates, and I want to be
yes,
there for him. So he's,
absolutely.
and so I'll rejoin you. Maybe I'll have a good connection when I get back to the Torah study the Saturday after this. I heard you say the 16th, correct?
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Good Shabbos, everyone. Thank you very much.
Safe travels. Safe travels.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
People, yeah, since it seems there's a permission here to give announcements or provide announcements that aren't directly. Okay, so anybody who doesn't have anything better to do, there's a little show on November 11th, starts November 11th. It's monthly. It's called Green Valley's Got Talent. And guess who is gonna be a participant in that?
Hey,
Oh, let me think.
the violin.
And no, let me just finish the announcement. It's me on the fiddle and the pianist from the klezmer band from Klezmer Kava. Unfortunately, our accordionist is having some health issues, so she couldn't participate. But if you don't have anything better to do, it's going to be at CPAC, if people are familiar with that.
Oh,
Unity Performing Center in Green Valley. Nice place.
Great.
Okay.
very good. Very good.
Fiddler on the Roof. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.